Have you ever wondered how the Aztecs came to be so famous? Have you ever wondered what the Aztecs believed to be the story of creation? Do you ever wonder how it all ended? Well, all those answers and more coming soon. The Aztec Empire was first formed in the beginning of the 13th century. More specifically, 1427. Before it escalated into such a westward powerhouse for civilization, it was split up into many small tribes. The most important of these small tribes established their soon-to-be magnificent city on Lake Texcoco. It was known as Tenochtitlan. Tenochtitlan is believed to be a nomadic tribe. Nomadic tribes follow their food and don't stay settled in one place for very long. But the Tenochtitlan tribe did end up settling when they saw an eagle perched on a cactus with a snake in its beak. Little did they know that this omen would produce a spark to ignite the fire of a civilization.
Soon after they began settling, they began constructing an artificial island of amazing magnitude. This is perhaps one of the most iconic aspects of their culture to this day. After the Aztecs had begun experiencing success in the field of our agriculture, they began making strong relationships with neighboring tribes such as Texcoco, Tlacopan, and more.
A language that dominated the Aztec Empire and even all of Mesoamerica was Nahuatl. It left a legacy to the Mexican people because even today there are still 1.5 million people who speak. The rituals of the Aztec Empire mainly consisted of sacrifices, or sacrificios in Spanish, of human and animal life. The priest would use these offerings, or ofrendas in Spanish, to please the gods.
Speaking of gods, in Spanish, they're called dioses. And how many do you think there are? 3? 5? 10 perhaps? Nope. They've had more than 20 gods. And these gods created everything, even themselves. Did you know that according to the Aztecs, the sun above us now is actually the 5th sun to have existed? The story begins long ago when Ometeotl, or the god of duality, created itself. This god was good and evil, chaos and order, male and female, and because it was both, it was able to have 4 children. Their names were Huitzilopochtli, the god of the south, Zipetotec, god of the north, Quetzalcoatl, god of the east, and Tezcatlipoca, god of the west. You'll want to remember those last 2, because they'll be coming back up again. The story continues when the world was created. The gods knew it was going to need a source of energy, but the sun was too powerful just to create. It required a sacrifice, one of the gods. And the god chosen to be sacrificed was Tezcatlipoca. This sacrifice only managed to become half of the sun. But after many trials and tribulations, the sun was eventually knocked down by giants, and in Tezcatlipoca's anger, he sent jaguars to destroy them. This deemed the first sun the jaguar sun, or Nahui Ocelotl for the Aztecs. The second sun was made when Quetzalcoatl took over the job as the sun. During this time, humans as we know them today were created. They lived on piñon nuts for a while. Sadly, the people became corrupt, so Tezcatlipoca made them turn into monkeys. Furious, Quetzalcoatl made a hurricane, then blew all the monkeys away. This made the second sun called the wind sun, or Nahue Ehecatl, for the Aztecs. Eventually, the third god was chosen to become the sun. His name was Tlaloc. Tlaloc was fine till Tezcatlipoca stole his lover. During this time, Tlaloc refused to reign even when he heard the pleas of the people. Drought filled the earth until Tlaloc made it rain fire, burning everything on earth. This gave him his name, the Rain Sun, or Nahui Quiahuitl, for the Aztecs. Next up is the fourth sun. It came to be when Tlaloc's sister was chosen to be next in line. Her name was Calchiutlicue, but Tezcatlipoca and Quetzalcoatl brought her down because of how jealous they were. On her way down, the sky widened open and let water flood the earth. Water destroyed everything on it. This gave it its name, the Water Sun, or Nahui Aro for the Aztecs. Last but not least, the person who was chosen to be the fifth sun was Nanahuatzin, a humbler god than Tukikistecal. To become the sun, there was a great fire built, but Tecuquiztecatl was too afraid to jump in. Nanahuatzin, on the other hand, did jump, followed closely by the jealous Tecuquiztecatl, a brave eagle, and the jaguar. When both suns came up from the east, the gods thought it was too bright, so they threw a rabbit in the face of Tecuquiztecatl and became the moon. But Nanahuatzin was too weak, so it couldn't move. The other gods drew their own blood to give him energy to rush across the sky, and this is the story of how Earth, the moon, and the sun came to be. The Aztecs believed the world would end with massive earthquakes. This gave the fifth sun its name, the Earthquake Sun.
The Aztec Empire reached its peak when it reached over 400 nation-states in size, each of these nation-states needing to pay a tribute to the Huetlationi. The Huetlationi meant great speaker or ruler. He also decided what he would get as tribute from each of these nation-states. The ruler was very important, but he wasn't in charge of everything. His second in command, Cihuacoatl, was in charge of everyday life in the empire. But when the emperor died, he did not get replaced by Cihuacoatl, his second in command. Instead, there was a council of 4 that chose who the next emperor would be. This would mean that if the emperor had a son, he would not necessarily be the next emperor. If it could be the emperor's brother, if the council saw him more fit to lead than his son. Then there was the general and the priests whose jobs were separate from the rest. The general was only supposed to be in charge of the military, while the priest's job was to keep the gods pleased, usually through human sacrifice. This did not sit very well with the people, which made enemies of the new lands they conquered. The laws of this monarchy system are very sophisticated for its times. They have laws on murder, stealing, drunkenness, and even property damage. But they have punishments like death, slavery, or a shaved head. This law system had one law specifically that made it different from all the rest, and it's that it had a law called the one-time forgiveness law. This law stated that if you confess to your crime to the priest before you were caught, you would be forgiven for your crime. But this could only be used once in a person's lifetime.
Now it's time for the open letter. Dear Aztec Empire, your empire's laws have a huge flaw in it. The one-time forgiveness law allows anyone to get away with a crime. If every person gets away with one crime, then it's around 5 million crimes that have been forgiven. That's insane! Even if only 1% of people who committed a crime murdered someone, that would be 50,000 murders. We recommend you get rid of this law completely, otherwise it will be taken advantage of and you will regret it later. The Aztec Empire's economy was not based on a currency system like most countries are today. Instead, the empire was based on a barter system. Trade was very important to the Aztecs because nobody used as many goods as the Aztecs. Every single place, whether big or small, city or village, had a market locally. With all of this, you would think they would have lots of gold, but no. Instead, they relied heavily on agricultural trade. They grew things such as beans, tobacco, squash, but most importantly, they grew corn.
The Aztecs accomplished many things in their time of rule, and although they are best known for having one of the largest and most powerful empires in all of Mesoamerica, they are also very highly skilled in engineering, and they not only mastered but perfected the art of making perfect artificial islands, called chinampas. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. For the Aztecs, it came when one external group who radically influenced and almost destroyed the Aztec Empire came. Their name was Spain. In 1517, when Mesoamerica was initially discovered, they set foot on what they thought of was a large island, and soon found native Mayans who did not exactly give them a hearty welcome. During the third expedition to Mexico, Hernan Cortes set off from Spain to attack the Aztec Empire with his crew of 11 ships. After the first battle, the Spanish conquerors, or conquistadores in Spanish, only grew in numbers. However, this slow conquering of the land was not what was destroying the population. Instead, diseases like mumps, smallpox, and the measles were what was eradicating the population. Just before Cortes invaded the Aztec Empire, there were roughly 25 million natives in the Aztec Empire. Just after 100 years, there are roughly 1.2 million natives remaining.